Cheyenne, Wyoming, where it has been very frigid cold the last couple days, well below zero, probably not as cold as it has been. Steve is, we call it over the hill, about 45 miles away. But certainly they're about 2,000 feet above where Cheyenne is at. So they get much colder than we do. As far as Wyoming Library to Business and kind of getting started today, I really do want to keep it as informal, but of course I have done my due diligence and created all the PowerPoint that we could possibly need for such an occasion. I do not want this to be death by PowerPoint, especially for those in our LBB cohort that have joined. They've heard this information probably more than once. So feel free to jump in at any time, unmute yourself, or go ahead and throw something in the chat if you have a question. Megan's gonna kind of review the chat for us as we get going here. Steve, go ahead and go the next one.
Okay. Okay, come on. There it goes.
There it goes.
Sorry.
Nope, that's okay. So again, we've sent out the contact info already. So if you haven't received that, Megan will drop it here in the chat very soon. So just so that you don't have to worry about scrambling to write everything down right away. Okay, so just a little bit of background. So Wyoming Library to Business is a statewide initiative to support library to business outreach in any of our 23 county public library systems. This statewide expansion is scaled from the Laramie County Library System, which is right here in Cheyenne, that's where I work, and our current library to business service, which we started in 2012. WL2B focuses on assisting women-owned and rural businesses through 4 different areas: the curation of current Wyoming small business resources, the creation of the Wyoming Library to Business Network, which is a peer-to-peer librarian group dedicated to connecting communities with Wyoming business experts and programs. So think just like our Libraries Build Business community, only much smaller. And our third is that we're working on expanding partnerships with local, state, and national economic development organizations, and then leveraging those partnerships and funding to work in tandem to provide technology for public libraries so that they can empower their local small businesses and entrepreneurs. This initiative provides high quality equipment for business stations and video production studios that anyone can access through their local libraries. Go ahead next. Okay, key partners, you're going to hear from Steve Boss, and he is brilliant and has, without him, we certainly would not have had near the wonderful turnout that we have with our program. And that's really where it started. Most importantly, I think I want to tell you is that everybody that you see here, this all happened very organically. One day, Steve and one of his colleagues from UW, they contacted me and they wanted to know, what are you guys doing over there, one county over, and to impact our entrepreneurship? And that just started a conversation. A month later, I was calling Steve and going, what if we had some money to do something fun? And that's literally how it began. The rest of these are partners, and we have well over 30 partnerships that we cultivated within that first 5 years. And you know, again, it's organic and it just happens one right after another. So I don't know where everybody's at with your program or what it is that you're trying to do, but don't look at this and think that any of this happened overnight. This is years, it is years in the making, but that doesn't mean that you can't make an impact tomorrow. Okay, next.
And it's still evolving.
Still evolving, that it is. So when we're talking about key resources, the first thing I want to know was what resources do you have within your library? Have you curated a list of databases, print material, other online materials, call numbers? I think it's readers advisory, I think is what they call those, where you list all the call numbers. In order to create a scalable statewide initiative or just a scalable initiative, maybe you're a main library and you're looking to include your branches, a single staff person that's just has some dedicated time can coordinate with various library systems and the partners and local decision makers. And again, always start with the basics. Identify and curate the available resources and provide an overview of these resources to other librarians and partners. For us, we're super lucky. GoWild.net is it's a part of the Wyoming State Library, and all of the county libraries have access to it. So that's where we started. And all of our business databases, we pulled some key ones there. And if you look over on the left-hand side, you can see where it says tutorials, other support materials. And then in a minute, we're going to talk about Wyoming business resources specifically. As we're doing this and as we're going forward, it's really important to understand who, from the programming partners, how are they impacting the rest of the state or the rest of your area? Are there gaps in that coverage? And then the next thing you want to do is just present your current program at local library conferences to gauge interest. That's how we got started. Internally, you really want to look at the service that's provided and divide it into manageable pieces. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay. So partnership programming, it's one of the easiest things to replicate since it can involve minimal staff time and can be as easy as introducing the partner to another librarian, which I spend a good portion of my time doing. One-on-one consultations are the most staff intensive. And to be perfectly honest, they're best served by an individual that has a business background or strong understanding of available business resources. Library land is my second career. My first career, I ran restaurants. So I've got the library land part or the business part down, but continuing to work on my library land side of things. But until we curated this list, there was not actually one spot that all the librarians or the general public could go to and find the majority of the economic development organizations that could help and assist them in their journey. And so this was pretty big for us. Again, it doesn't have to be, sometimes the simple is what works the best. Okay, go ahead. Okay, Steve, all you.
At the University of Wyoming, we have something that has been developed over time called, it's based on Penn State's model called the One Button Studio. And you can see it there on the left, the one that says Laramie. We decided to put fully functional video studios in 3 other locations in the state, especially those county libraries that had the space to do so. So what can a video production studio be used for when it comes to doing library to business? What it can do is you can make an entrepreneurial pitch using it. You can get entrepreneurs in the studio and they can practice and practice their entrepreneurial speech. Makes perfect. You see green screens there. You can put backgrounds and things like that. Using the green screen and then putting backgrounds that will help perhaps sell the business or the product that your entrepreneur is trying to sell or promote. You can create a vlog or a podcast. You can demonstrate a new product. And you can show how a business is responsive to community needs. Now, a little bit about these studios. You look at them and they're all different. We have the same equipment footprint and we've outlined that. Anybody interested, reach out to me. But every single one of these is different and we've run into interesting things in each deployment. But they all are working, and we are happy to share this with anybody that's interested. Additionally, all of the workstations that we're putting out across the state could be set up as little miniature video recording studios, because we're going to go to 4K USB cameras. So this thing is constantly evolving. So a few tips for setting these up and getting ready to set them up. Before you go ahead with it, meet with all the key players, the construction lead, the team, make sure there's an electrician handy, explain the big picture. Make sure that there's a plan in writing for your studios and make sure that everybody can refer to it. And make sure there's a good decision maker on site that can make key decisions, especially financials. I saw some good questions here. People wondered, well, what do you do? Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Stephen Boss and I work at the University of Wyoming. I am and it's sort of a mouthful, the Information Technology, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship Librarian. Try saying that 3 times fast. Okay, on to the next slide. Okay, here are the business stations that we're deploying at every county library in the state. And these were the business stations that I was talking about that you could add a 4K USB camera to. These are all built to a standard. They're laptops that have built-in webcams, although they're kind of small. Mice and keyboards, and that little stand that you see also included as a projector. So you can just roll the thing around and go ahead and project in a business presentation in an area where there's a screen. The home page for these terminals are set to the page that Rachel showed you previously, and that's with the state library. Those pages are forever evolving. There's a good free list of resources associated with those pages, and we curate those, trying to find more and more free resources in as much as possible. But we make sure that they're quality, in addition to the high quality vendor supplied databases. The thing about Wyoming is it's a pretty small state in terms of population. It's a big state in terms of land mass, but it's very, very easy to work together. And we see the same people meeting after meeting because the group of librarians in the state is fairly small. So we can literally get all the directors together in one place and do presentations like that to them and then communicate with them throughout. Okay, there's the next slide. A little bit about peer collaboration and communication. And right in front of you, you see some of the county libraries that we've deployed equipment to. Make sure that you have clear communication with your stakeholders, partners, and the growing library entrepreneurial community. This is all key to developing, implementing, and scaling these type of projects across the vastness of our state and yours. Few things we learned along the way, kind of the hard way, but we learned a lot of good stuff. Communicate with stakeholders and internal team members on modern communication platforms such as Slack, as opposed to just standard email. Slack is really a wonderful platform, and those who are new here, give it a try. You'll be impressed. Rachel and I used a project management software to kind of keep things on track because there's a lot of moving pieces and parts. We used monday.com for that. And as we roll out more technology projects, we might get back to that and continue to use it. Again, finding the right communication platform for all stakeholders can be challenging and must fit the needs of the project and those involved. Here are a few other ones, but for the library to business, Slack is our main go-to, but some of the other ones include Trello. MS Teams is a good one, and Asana.
One more piece. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rachel.
One more piece on that communication. Make sure you set communication frequency expectations and acceptable response timing. Agree in advance on how to handle those disruptions because they're going to come. And so it's super important as you're scaling something. When are you going to meet? What does that look like? And really stick to it as best as you can. You can always change it, but at least start with a really good plan. I forgot, Megan, what was the name of that book? Oh, the Checklist Manifesto. If you haven't read it, it was recommended by one of the individuals in our cohort and is incredibly helpful. So let's talk about funding. How do you fund something like this? Well, very slowly, and then all of a sudden it just next thing you know, you do such a great job with the first program that someone else taps your shoulder and says, hey, we want to give you more money, which is exactly what happened with our particular with our initiative. So started out, we got our Libraries Build Business grant, and we changed. Oh, go ahead. Oh,
Slide.
oh, nope.
Me clapping.
Oh, I don't know the difference between a clap and a wave, so sorry about that. So we applied for and were accepted into this program, and I cannot even tell you how many times our budget changed. It got to the point where it felt like it was changing literally as we were going along, almost every week. And the best part is that COVID was actually a really good thing for us, because something that we had originally set the money, a significant portion of funds aside for, we weren't able to use the funds towards that. So that's how the business stations came about, and they are way more helpful than our original plan. So when you're thinking long term, it's okay that these disruptions happen, because sometimes it forces you to think kind of around the corner a little bit. So with our first round of funding, we've been able to install 7 business stations and 3 video production studios, create the Wyoming Library to Business Network, which includes, let's see, logos and branding from a professional standpoint, not just from an internal marketing person or a couple of people, but we actually paid a really great Wyoming company to help us with that. And as we were kind of starting to wrap things up and trying to figure out what we were going to do this last fall, the Small Business Development Center in Wyoming tapped us and said, hey, we would like you to be a part of this new program that we're applying for. And what can that look like? And are you interested? And because of that, then we were able to take a good portion of our money, because our Libraries Build Business funding, we had a pretty good leeway with how we were able to spend that and pivot that money and use it how we wanted. The Community Navigator money is federal money. So if you've ever had a federal grant, you would know that, yes, every time you make a change, you have to ask. It's not necessarily a given. So we were able to set aside 30 grand for future equipment replacements, because the whole point was that we weren't supposed to be adding a ton of, time or funds, I guess I should say, to each individual budget of these libraries. They don't have money to begin with. So it's important that we're able to continue to keep this going. So partnerships, one partnership led to another partnership, and now we're going to get to go finish up across the state in order to make sure that there's a business station in at least every single county in Wyoming. And Steve is working really hard on taking our video production studio and making it totally portable. And we're going to be able to use some money for a fairly significant marketing campaign, just to, again, remind folks that when they're not sure where to turn, always head to your library. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. So the library business program has been both challenging but incredibly rewarding. And everybody, of course, has dealt with some of the bumps in the road. My little not smiley friend there on the right, COVID really threw some wrenches into the works, but we worked through them. Kind of going back to Rachael and meeting with people and making that a really important priority. For the record, Rachael and I meet weekly. And we always have plenty to talk about, and there's plenty on the work list to do. And we do that, of course, using Zoom, since she's down the hill from me, but we try to communicate on a regular basis, and I try to inform her of new ideas and things that we're running into with technology, and she informs me of new things that are on the horizon with library to business. It's important to remember to try to mainstream library to business programs into library practice. This program isn't the program of the month, the week, the year, or whatever. This is something that we should be mainstreaming and basically kind of evangelizing about, that librarians should be doing. A few things about the program. It requires constant caring, feeding, a lot of research, and then of course promotion. Because if you think about it, entrepreneurship and business never really stop. Hopefully in each of your states, and that's certainly the case in Wyoming, we want new businesses to be established. Wyoming, and a little bit about Wyoming. We have the lowest population of any state in the nation. People are spread across a large mountainous landmass. At times, due to the state's elevation, topography, and constant wind and vast distances, travel and communication can be a problem. You know, the 8 months of winter kind of get to you after a while. I'm kidding, it's not 8 months, but sometimes the long march to spring is long in coming. Wyoming doesn't, it's one of those, it reminds me kind of the ad campaign for Nebraska. It's not for everyone. Well, in Wyoming, it's not for everyone either. We have no really large urban centers. Cheyenne and Casper are the two biggies, and they only have about 80,000 people. And then from there, it drops to Laramie, where we're only at 40,000. So if you want an urban experience, not really, Wyoming probably wouldn't be your style. Our project management team for this was fairly small. Rachael, myself, and sort of arm's length, the state library, and then project leaders or library leaders in the county libraries across the state. We had a substantive list of things to do in a short time to do it. We've used a number of tools in the cloud and tried to keep it that way. And again, each library we go to and talk to about this is different. It's really good to know and do a little research on the county library and then the communities in the counties where we're going. What are their specialties there? What is their history? What is their business history?
So I'd kind of like to, especially now, why are you here listening to this? Are you going to start a statewide initiative? Are you looking to maybe just extend across to other branches? There are certainly some library systems in the US that have more locations than we have across our entire state. So they might be very adept at rolling something like this out. That being said, we want to make sure that we are here and that we're helping you. I guess my last tips and tricks would be, first of all, you gotta, regardless of where you're at and whether you're scaling to 23 libraries or 2 branches, you gotta have a positive attitude. Persistence and adaptability are an absolute must for a project of this scope and size. You really have to be prepared to be a cheerleader, a coach, and the center at any given time, and sometimes even within the same conversation. Make sure that you create topics that you can cover based on the feedback from your participants. Make sure, again, the content is relative to their needs. All communities are unique and need different resources and approaches. And make sure that you're talking with your communities. What do they need? I think that sometimes it can be very easy for us, or I should say for me, very easy to assume I know what you need instead of asking. So maybe, despite the fact that I thought that what our state needed was another database, really what they needed were brand new laptops so that they could have these types of conversations with economic development organizations virtually, who aren't necessarily always able to physically get to the rural communities. Making sure that you collect qualitative stories and make sure that you have surveys that assist with quantitative data. You got to be certain to create and track very measurable outcomes. That we all know that's how you continue to gain steam and gain funding for whatever it is that you're working on. So always begin with the end in mind. And with that being said, Carly, ask a question. Yay.
Rachel and Steve, thank you for the presentation. This was great. I have one question that you might have mentioned, but how did you get in touch with your business community to learn about this need? Did you reach out to the SBDC or did you put a survey out? How did you get this information from the community?
For which part? For starting the program?
Sorry, for the equipment. So how did you learn
Oh.
that, like this? Sorry, yeah, that was probably helpful information. Yeah, about that they could use the green screen, the camera. How did you get that information?
Part of it, in terms of, we observed how the studio is being used here at the University of Wyoming. It's not just for students. People from the community can come in and use it. People from the state can come in and use it. So we observed how people were using it. In terms of how did we figure out there was a need across the state for this type of program, one thing I didn't mention is Wyoming's economy is not extremely varied at all. That's a real problem. When the mineral and energy extraction industry is down, our state is just down, and it's really bad. We need to really work, and that's what we're working on, to diversify the economy, to grow small businesses, encourage small businesses to get established and then grow. To try to make Wyoming's economy more recession-proof, especially since it's kind of a one-hit wonder economy. I mean, we like people to come visit. Tourism, don't get me wrong, tourism is an important part of the state's economy, but the real big money maker is pulling oil out of the ground and minerals and things like that. Hope that answered your question. I'll turn that over to Rachel too to expand on it more.
And that, Carly, that's a perfect question. So I really wasn't even aware that we had such a thing as a studio until I met with Steve in 2019, October of 2019. And within that time frame, like 2 weeks later was when the Libraries Build Business piece came out. So I had already been working with various partners, and again, a small state, you're able to talk to people one-on-one. And so me going to dinner with the district director of the Wyoming SBA is no big deal, because we just all know each other. And she and I had multiple conversations on how do we get this program that we were currently doing at LCLS at Lerma County, how do we get that out and about? And so those pieces were already in place when Steve came and told me about this, and then the grant came about. Actually, the first thing I did was go to these partners and asked the question, hey, we're going to have an opportunity to ask for some money, and this is what I think we should do with it. What are your thoughts? And I went to the SBA. We have a group called Impact 307, and they do a ton with incubation space. And they are very technology driven. And I went to them and I said, do you think that this will be helpful? I went to the community college that's here in our town, and I talked to them and I said, hey, are you guys going to put one of these in? Because if you are, I don't want to double down in this community. And so it was a lot of groundwork as far as just asking the question, is this going to be helpful? Because I didn't want to waste funds on something that or my time on something that wasn't. So does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, it seems like a ton of outreach. So yeah, that definitely answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll add just a little small piece, because our goal is to put one of those workstations in all the libraries across the state. We can easily add audio video production to those quite easily. Well, why wouldn't we build full studios across all the spaces in the state? one, that's a lot of equipment, and we're going to have to maintain it after the fact. But another thing is many of these libraries, once you get outside the big libraries in the state, some of these libraries are only 1 or 2 rooms. And so they just simply do not have the space to put a fully tricked out studio, but they certainly could do it with a little laptop cart like you're seeing that we are pushing out.
Very
Lee.
cool. Thank you.
Lee, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Lee Whiting from the Salt Lake County Library System.
Yay, our neighbor.
Hey, hi. I was very interested in attending today. Thanks for the great presentation. I'm chair of our business reference work group at the county library here in Salt Lake. And we always have lots of ideas. It's challenging to implement things. But one of the ideas that's been floating around, and not just for business use, is that the emerging trend of people requiring privacy and video access. And there's some different models out there. I see someone on the call here is from Plano. I guess there's a library in Texas, maybe not far from Plano, that has a partnership with a local hospital system to do healthcare consults from the library situation. And so I guess one creative idea that we've thought about is not necessarily earmarking, if you will, a facility or equipment such as this solely for business use, but also to extend other potential uses like conferences with your parole officer, or court appointments, or remote healthcare, or just, yes, they could be business conferences. They could also be educational conferences. And then do you get into the issues of networking one-to-one or one-to-many? And what's the other, do you have a viewing station along with the actual broadcast station? So there's different, in our case, because we're a metro library system, and to hold a meeting with our 18 branch managers means everyone either has to get in a car and drive around town, or we do it remotely, or then in this other possibility, maybe we have satellite locations where smaller groups of regional as in regional in the valley, 5 or 6 people get together, and you have a meeting that's conducted between 3 clusters. So you get a social aspect along with the virtual aspect. So I guess there's a lot to explore here. But one of the concerns has been through this, if it is a multi-purpose facility, establishing some boundaries, some privacy, and then utilization, and then trying to figure out who's using it for what purpose on the back end would also be a factor. So those are some things we've been talking about here.
And so here's something exciting. A couple weeks ago, Lee, I met a woman, actually, she is from UW. Steve, I haven't even got to tell you about this yet. She is currently working on a very large grant to, I guess there are HIPAA compliant little, I don't know what like the old school phone booths. It's a HIPAA compliant phone booth. And she's working on she wants to partner with libraries in Wyoming. It sounds like it's very similar to what Plano might be doing. But those are, 30 grand a piece. So a little more reach than what we have on the business side of things, but certainly people are looking to libraries so that they can have those private conversations. For us, when we set up the MOUs with all of our sites, whether it's a business station or a video production studio, they can use it however they want. The caveat was that for the first 2 years, business activities had to take priority, but that didn't mean that they couldn't use the equipment for, let's say, a nonprofit PSA, or that a student couldn't come in and create a video for their classroom, whatever that looks like. So does that make sense? I hear what you're saying. You don't really want to pigeonhole equipment only for one
Right.
thing.
No, it totally makes sense. Thanks. I did have one follow-on question, and that has to do with the webpage at the state library. It looks like you might be using SpringShare LibGuides to build that out. How do you manage and curate that collection, and what is the arrangement in Wyoming for that website set of resources? And is it different throughout the state, or is that the one place everyone goes to?
Good. That's another good question. So the state library is hosting our website for this group. It is a LibGuide. I have been introduced and can now do the behind the scenes part, which is kind of fun. As far as the actual information itself, this is information that I have pulled together because I did not know for the first couple of years who did what, because there was a lot of crossover. And I didn't understand, why is there crossover? Why does there have to be crossover? You know, the SBA handles this, SBDC handles this. There are all these, different acronyms, and I don't even know who does what. So just pulling that information together and figuring out, that took me some time. But if it took me 5 years to do that, here in the state capital, where most everyone is, where all of those entities exist in some form or fashion, what would it take for one of our smaller libraries to do that? And so that was the driving force behind, we just need all this information in one place. And it hadn't been until this point. Actually, the SBDC was working on it the exact same time we were. And because we hadn't talked about it, we were both creating it. The difference is that at least there is there's some crossover, but the SBDC includes all the chambers of commerce, but they won't include any nonprofits. In the meantime, we include nonprofits on the library site, but if you have to pay for it, we don't include it. So there's good crossover, and we link directly to the SBDC's list as well. That was a really long way to answer that question.
No, thank you.
The studio at UW is used any way you can imagine. We've had people doing panel discussions there, and I don't even know if Rachel knows this. Rachel, I have to take apart the studio, completely take it apart, because, drum roll, they're going to soundproof the rooms. Speaking of privacy, and perhaps it will at last be able to do what I've dreamed of, because one of my degrees is in music. There might be some vocal music people in there shrieking out opera. So we'll see. But they're going to soundproof it. They're going to tear it down to the studs, and then we'll put it back together after it's soundproofed. And if we have too many people using the studio, we will put together another one. So Plano, I'm very interested to see what you guys come up with. Let's keep in touch.
I do love Plano's podcast. If you haven't heard it yet, I think, was it Carly? Was it you that recommended it? Yep.
Yeah, I
Thank
still
you.
recommend it. It's great.
Thank you. We have a section called Learning and Leading that normally highlights business and career resources. But Plano is doing business things, and maybe we'll come on another time to share what we do. We're working with Dallas Score, and Carly is our fabulous mentor, and I'm so enjoying working with her.
Likewise, we had our last meeting today.
Anyone else thinking of scaling a program in some form or fashion?
Well, you've given me lots of great ideas. In our library, we actually have a room right off my department that we could use to do this type of production studio. But I think I'd have to do all that preliminary research to find out if it would meet our community's needs. But lots of good ideas. Because I also, in the room, I do have TVs. We could easily do those virtual meetings for them. They could use it, yeah. So I have great ideas. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and if anybody wants an equipment list, either for the business station or the studios, we would be more than happy. We've got it spec'd out to all the way down to the HDMI cords. So
Yep.
We'd be more than happy to help you.
And we're
No.
researching 4K video, so we'll keep researching. Sony has a really good recorder that looks really interesting for about $1,000. I'd like to get my hands on it and give it a try.
I have a question for the group. I've never attended one of these before, and I have a tiny baby here, so excuse me, but COVID times. But I work in a public library. It's just single standing in the Chicago suburbs. 47,000 people is our district, and I'm interested in thinking about the work from home population. We are a suburb of Chicago, a sort of far suburb of Chicago, but lots of the members of our bedroom community are now seeing themselves just kind of thrown into work from home. And I feel like there is an opportunity there. And while it isn't necessarily like business, I'm not helping entrepreneurs grow, I'm not helping people start a business. There is, I feel like there's sort of a different sector now of like working people. And just kind of thinking about any ideas that anybody in the group has for that, or interesting things you've seen around, anything like that.
I have seen, oh, go ahead.
As far as public libraries are concerned, here at our library, I wish most of the time that we could take our study rooms and cut them in half, because we could easily fill 12 co-working spaces every day. And so that's kind of an interesting, I'm sure ALA has already gone and looked at that, but it's super interesting to see that shift and how we as libraries can just provide that space for people to come in, and instead of necessarily studying for a class, they're doing their work. We actually have some really large tables here, and we have folks that come in and make those blankets that with the really big yarn, I don't know what it is, yarn or something. And they make it right there on the big table because it's the biggest table they can find in our community. So
there are a number of libraries, public libraries, that have set up co-working spaces out there, Ashley. And I, like you, I'm originally from Illinois. I'm from Rockford. So I'm sure that there's probably quite a number of co-working spaces in the Chicagoland area and throughout the state, probably by now, or they're thinking about it at least.
I was kind of thinking, like, we have a lot of large corporations in our district. That's kind of our bread and butter. So it'd be kind of interesting to see if those corporations, or if their employers would want to kind of partner. I know that is sort of not necessarily the vibe that public libraries always want to put out there, is like partnering with corporations, but they're the ones telling their employees to stay home, you know, so it's I don't know, I think it's kind of like a wellness thing too. Like people need to be, plenty of people like to stay home, but some people need to get out of their house even to do the work that they need to do. So I'm just kind of thinking about long-term opportunities because I don't think it's going anywhere, you know. I don't know.
It certainly is a new avenue for libraries, and you can promote it, and it's really a positive promotion too. Because yeah, I know a couple of businesses that have just completed. My sister works in Rockford in a home office type of thing, where what she does and what her husband does, there is no office to go into anymore. COVID has completely upended that model. And how many people here think we're going to go back to the way it was before? Nobody. Yeah. Brave new
It seems
world.
like every day somebody's sending me an article that's about, you know, the Great Resignation and how people are changing the way that they work and all of these things. And I guess I'm just kind of assuming that's my space at the library. So how can I how can I help? Or I don't know. I don't know if it's a library problem to solve, or if there's even anything there that I'm sure there is. There's always a space for libraries to contribute to every problem in society. So maybe in time.
Well, and maybe, I know Megan wants to get us all closed up here, but Ashley, maybe it's going to multiple companies and asking them, do you want to sponsor these? And there are all kinds of little pods out there to to keep things private. And maybe you get a bunch of them to go in together, and these are, you know, these office pods are, you know, supported by X, Y, and Z companies. You know, we have naming rights on bookshelves. So why couldn't a company have a naming right on some business pods?
Interesting. Thank you.
Anything else, Rachel or Steve?
Well, I can talk forever about this stuff. So
Well,
we all know we got to cut me off.
Got to be realistic. We could both do it. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. I could listen forever. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I dropped an exit ticket into the chat. It takes you just 1 minute to give us a little bit of feedback on presentation today and thoughts for moving forward. This is a monthly community discussion series. We'll have different facilitators and presenters. In fact, if you are interested in being a facilitator or a presenter, let me know. We would love to have you, just so people can learn about one another's programs around the country, different resources that are available, spark discussion about, you know, kind of engaging ongoing trends and topics. So let me know, and please let us know in the exit ticket what you're interested in hearing about down the road. Thank you so much, Rachel and Steve. This was really great, as everyone is saying in the chat. And thanks everyone for being here. I'll leave the line open, so if people do want to stick around and chat a few more minutes, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
And if you would like to partner with somebody from our Libraries Build Business cohort, we do have coaches that are available, like Miss Carly, obviously Plano, Texas. She's doing great work with them. And so, yeah, just touch base with Megan. Actually, I think it's on our community, isn't it?
It's on the community and on the LBB website. Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Yeah, we'll be doing coaching probably for the rest of the 2022 year. So if you're interested in that, definitely reach out to us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.